Up today on Locked On Texas Tech, paging Mr. Guinness. We say the word culture in this episode more than previously thought to be humanly possible. We're making history next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Glad to have you along for the ride again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen once again. Every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Also available now on the SiriusXM app. That's SXM in the App Store. Check us out there. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, looking forward to today's conversation because it's going to encompass something that right now seems to be in a relatively healthy and fruitful state for Texas Tech football. I don't know if anybody's been watching the NBA postseason that's in our audience, but it seems like the two teams that are most likely to meet up in the finals, one already there in the Nuggets, the other maybe soon to be there in the Miami Heat. You hear this word over and over with those teams as it relates to the broadcasters, Chris. Culture. And sometimes when you've got a roster that maybe is not stacked, with blue chip kind of talent, maybe you got some, but you're not just across the board the most talented team, et cetera. The things that can lift you beyond that talent level, culture, because it really is an umbrella, I think, that covers just about everything under your football or basketball or baseball sun, because it's all about effort. It's all about the standard. It's all about the way you come to work Monday through Friday, much less when the lights are on Saturday. It encompasses so many things, and we want to get to the bigger picture in the Big 12 Conference coming up in just a minute as far as it relates to that. Maybe some you'd like to emulate, some who've got it going on. But I think so far, Chris, I don't want to speak too soon, but it seems like Joey McGuire has got it going on in the culture department here in Lubbock.
Yeah, I think your NBA point is a valid one. I don't watch a ton of Miami Heat basketball, but you're right. It's Jimmy Butler and a bunch of guys that I think most people are like, I don't know if that's a championship type roster, but Eric Spoelstra has always done a phenomenal job of creating culture, which is extremely difficult at the professional level because the pieces change so much and guys get into business so much, the business side so much, so it's hard to get them to buy in and do the culture like things. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that Joey has done. You try to sum him or the job that he's done to this point up, and this word culture, it gets thrown around a lot, and I think people. It means different things to different people. I think, whereas culture to somebody means one thing, it may mean something completely different to the other. But in my, through my lens, I guess I would say that that's the one thing that he's done the most is either change or build, a team culture since he's taken over. And I think it's like you could point to a long list of things that I think all, funnel under the kind of the culture umbrella, because
yes,
it's not just like, I think a prime example is, yes, we've spent some time talking about Kobe Minor getting into the portal. And we've talked about how, that kind of stung a little bit, Philip Liddy left. But for the most part, you really haven't lost people, okay? They want to stay here and be a part of this thing. And yeah, there's a few guys that have left because I think you kind of like, hey, probably not going to play, or you got passed up on the depth chart like Reggie Pearson. And so I think there's a lot of examples that point to the culture that this head coach has created. And I think Joey, I say it all the time, he's a vibe. Like he's an energy guy. He's just like it's this CEO, it's this head coach, it's this motivational speaker, it's this brand. It's this guy. Yeah. When we go looking for a basketball coach, it's like, what do we all say? Go find somebody just like that dude that coaches the other sport. I mean, that's the best compliment you can give Coach McGuire. And so, yeah, culture is what I think it was tasked with developing, building, or whatever. And I think he's done it.
Yeah, I think you see some intangibles, but then also some tangible results of that culture. One tangible result, just as an example of what you're talking about, being the fact you've got two 35-year-old defensive tackles. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's fun to play here. And I'm sure there's more developmental stuff and, what you get playing under Tim DeRuyter and what you like about the college experience, or living in Lubbock, or being the mayor of Lubbock in Tony Bradford's case, or whatever it might be, Chris. But it's decisions like that I think do speak to the fact that you've got a healthy and fruitful environment in whatever way that you want to describe that. Culture means a different thing to a guy in the biology lab, means something different to somebody out in Spade, Texas, America, where we don't call it culture, we call it couth. You ain't got no couth, boy. Shut the door. In or out. But yeah, I think we understand what we mean, though, for the most part, that in the college football world or college sports world in general, again, culture can take you beyond where your talent level is going to be. And it would seem like a requirement for everybody in the nation to have a culture of some fruitful variety, but particularly, I was going to say, double down on it for Texas Tech, where you're not going to have the most talented roster or the deepest talented roster. You better have a culture standard that leads you to some success.
Yeah, because, I think, the brand, the hardest working, most competitive, and all that stuff that they talk about, that's culture. That's a different phrase. And basically, this is our culture. I mean, there's different examples of that you could point to that is culture. But to your point, I don't think you can win big in college football, these days without this culture word. Okay. Because, and this is why, like I saw, and I think some people were shocked. Some people were like, this is dead on. But like Colorado's win total came out a day or so ago. Of an odds maker set it at like 3.5. And I think a lot of people are like, look at those people doubting Deion Sanders and all that stuff. The flip side, though, is that their entire roster is just non-existent, and it's you're going to have to start from scratch, adding a bunch of pieces, and then trying to create this culture. And your season starts in what, 3 or 4 months? So the point is that I think when you win big in college football these days, you're not looking at a team. I mean, look at I'm trying to think of a few other examples. There's just not going to be a lot of big turnover with your roster and the portal and all that equals immediate success. That would be very rare. Basketball, we're going to see it a lot more. Kansas State did it. A lot of teams are being forced into this or doing it by their choice. It's just difficult to get done. But football, there's got to be a component of, and what Joey believes is like, we're going to get these high school kids. We're going to grow them up. Yeah, we're going to sprinkle in portal guys. If there's a need and we have a hole on the roster, we're absolutely going to go visit the portal. We're going to be very particular about the locker room presence. And so we're not going to go take a problem child and risk screwing up our locker room because it may affect our culture. And so, but I think in college football, culture still wins, and it's still going to win, even with NIL, even with the portal and all those things. It's going to be those.
Oh, Chris,
places. Yeah.
I would say on the NIL point, if you don't have a culture, it could tear you apart.
Yeah.
Like, you better have a culture that's in a healthy state, right? Because you've got these factors now that could decimate you if you're not healthy, say, in the locker room.
No, I mean, You're exactly right, and I think there's some examples out there where you try to buy this, buy that, and I think it's just it's going to be very difficult to do that, but especially so in football because you can't football like on the NIL piece. It doesn't matter what position you go by. If you go get the best one, if you don't have lots of things around this person, it doesn't matter if you go buy a quarterback or a running back or receiver. There's so many other things that you need, like an offensive line. It doesn't matter if you go, buy a pass rusher if you have nobody on the back end that can cover anybody. What I mean? So there's just lots
all right. What is this? A personal letter to Jimbo Fisher? Sorry. Who's Jimbo Smith?
Yeah. But I just think that's been the most impressive thing that I've seen with Joey since he got here is just his ability to and you know what else culture is to me? It's energy. I think it's his people have gone to these Red Raider Club functions, this tour that they're on, and Joey's got them all wanting to run through the wall for them, and like you see his commercial wanting to hey man, buy your season tickets now. There's a legitimate energy in the fan base, but he's the energetic one, and he's like this all the time. How long he will be able to keep this up, I don't know, but I hope it's for a long time because I think Texas Tech and Lubbock will benefit greatly if he can. But it's infectious, and you want to sum that energy up. It's playing hard for somebody, emptying your bucket and like really straining and playing really hard for a guy instead of just being like, yeah, man, I don't really care. So it's clear to me though, with all your close wins last year, you rolled your sleeves up and you're like, you know what? This means something to me. I'm gonna play really hard. And guess what? We got some results and plenty of them actually to go along with that. The overtime wins, lots of them. Being down 20-0 in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then coming back and kind of making that a game. This to me is culture. That is you want to point to one thing where being a positive energy guy and some of these branding things like the brand and all that they talk about. And what is that? How does that translate? I think that is exactly how it translates is you can see those results and close results and how much it matters to some of these guys.
Particularly when adversity strikes, chips are down, it's 20-0, your back's against the wall. Do you have anything to lean on as far as culture or standard belief is concerned? And apparently they did a season ago, and you're so right about the infectious energy from Joey McGuire. And it's great that it's obviously being felt by the fan base, but more importantly, being felt by the team. It makes it fun to go to work. I really don't recall a time, maybe some intermittent moments where I worked for a guy that I was really excited to do a good job for, Chris, and inspired me to really, meet the challenge every day. I think you're very lucky if you have a boss or a leader like that. Most of us do not. Of course, here in this Locked On Texas Tech era, I just spring out of bed because I'm so damn excited to get here and have a conversation with Chris Level. So it's much different than it used to be. But
back at you.
You want to please guys like that. You want to do a good job, and it doesn't even almost have anything to do with you to a certain extent. It's like, I want to do a good job for this dude. This energy is infectious, and it translates to that roster. And I think we saw a lot of that clearly. And we have seen some eras where it was the opposite. You were down, you were out. There was no, I'm down, but not out. No, you were down, you were out. We were going ahead and burying you there at halftime. Thankfully, it seems like that's changed for the better. Chris, let's step back and take a bigger picture look at this as we continue to say the word culture more than any Locked On podcast on planet Earth today. I dare you to meet that challenge. Show me another that's going to say this word more on one singular episode. Who's got the culture elsewhere in the Big 12 conference that you think we're envious of? Who do you view as being at the top of that culture list in the Big 12? But first, today's episode brought to you by Birddogs. Best looking, best feeling shorts known to man. Also to the aliens at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. They're going to tell you the same thing. Birddogs have got you covered for all occasions with their luxurious, stretchy fabric. You will never feel better than you feel in a pair of Birddogs. Get them right now at birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and you're going to get a free tumbler from Birddogs with every order. Doesn't matter the occasion, Birddogs has got you covered, whether you're grilling, chilling, thrilling. You feeling me? If not, head to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and you will be shortly. I'm even getting some second looks from the cattle when I'm out ranching in my Birddogs. Look good, feel great with the most versatile shorts on planet Earth. Right now at birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Again, birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. And when you're there, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for that free custom tumbler with every order from our friends at Birddogs. Who do you view as being at the top of that culture list in the Big 12?
I think this is a great conversation because it's a conversation when you start looking at how you think teams are going to be this next season, and you're kind of having to go with some projections or some unknowns, and so much of I think projections, towards some teams have to do with, I trust their culture. I just think they're going to be good because they're always good.
They're going to figure it out.
Yeah, this is what they stand for type stuff.
Yeah.
I would bet that most people from the outside would suggest that Kansas State maybe is the top of the culture list in the Big 12. This is a program that Texas Tech has had nightmares with. You just simply can't. And it really, shockingly, it's Bill Snyder to Chris Kleiman has been flawless. Chris Kleiman has got the defending Big 12 champs sitting up in Manhattan, Kansas. And I'm just telling you, if you've ever been to Manhattan, Kansas, I say this often, what Bill Snyder did and what Chris Kleiman is doing is extremely impressive. They have nice facilities. There is not a whole lot going on in Manhattan, Kansas. There's just not. And, it's very much a blue-collar mentality. And you have a few – and their culture could only take them so far. It won them the Big 12 championship. It's not the same as being on the – because they have a handful of, star players, okay? Their quarterback, Will Howard, was good. We know about Deuce Vaughn, who I think was one of the best players in the Big 12 that I've seen in a while. And you sprinkle in Uzama, I think that was the defensive end that I think actually the Chiefs may have drafted. And so there's just a handful of guys. But you put that team on the field against Alabama, and it's a boat race because they just got speed and athleticism at all positions and tons of depth. So – there's a bit of a limit on how much Chris Kleiman's team could do, I guess, at least last year. But the best compliment you can give a guy is he squeezes every drop out of what he's given. And it's extremely difficult, I would guess, to recruit to Manhattan, Kansas. And yet they're consistent. They do it the right way. They are sound. This is – I sometimes call BS on it, but it's like they're one of the least penalized teams consistently all the time. To me, all those things are culture. I think Lance Leipold is starting to build some reputation for that at Kansas. I think he doesn't have the body of work, and you need to continue to do it a bit. But he's got legit dudes, Devin Neal at running back and. I think Jalen Daniels at quarterback, those are kind of first-team type guys at quarterback and running back at Kansas, but they are legit. They just are. But I think that how disciplined they are, how structured they are, how bad it was before he got there, and now they're competitive. That they kind of They scare you a little bit because you can't just automatically check a W. They went to a bowl game last year. Those are Lance Leipold changing and building culture. College freaking game day was in Lawrence, Kansas last year. It should tell you all you need to know. I mean, the stadium was sold out. Again, should tell you all you need to know. Those are culture to me. Matt Campbell at Iowa State. I think this is a great conversation to have. I would have said they had great culture before. Last year, the results on the field just were not there. Now he's changed a few things. He's changed some scheme. He's changed maybe a strength coach. He's changed there's a few other things that they've changed, maybe some of his staff. And so is he trying to kind of, resuscitate that, that culture that they had? Is he trying? Is that the right word? Did I say that right? Resuscitate?
Yeah, resuscitate.
Like shock it back into into rhythm, because they
defibrillate.
There you go. They did have this. I mean, and they were much like Kansas State, sprinkling a few star players. We're going to do things right. We're going to work hard. We're not going to beat ourselves. It's going to be kind of boring, but we're just going to win, and we're going to do it consistently. Then you you drop a bit last year, and so does this culture kind of get them back quicker, or do they just have a hard time, getting it back? But those would be my, who has the most fascinating culture? Because if I say this name to you or this program to you, and if I said it to 20 different people, I think you would get a whole bunch of different answers, some on the grid, some way off the grid, some kind of like, I don't really know. Like, think about Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State.
I knew you were going to Stillwater.
He's stepped in it before. He's outspoken. He doesn't care who knows or who thinks that. He does it his way. I've heard so many people say, yeah, he's not really engaged a ton like he used to be. He's not this. Look at their roster, because they lost a lot on the roster, and I think the folks at Oklahoma State will tell you this in many cases was a good thing. We needed to lose some of these guys because we're trying to get our culture back. But the one undeniable fact is that program has won 7 or more games 17 years in a row, I believe it is. They've gone to a bowl game for 17 straight seasons. You could say whatever you want about, Mike Gundy or that color orange or that they can't beat Oklahoma. These are all fair. I get it. But you're not winning in a Power 5 league 7 games or more. And there's several double-digit win seasons in there.
Oh, yeah.
There's several big-time bowl games in there. To me, that's culture. I mean, it just is. It may be different than others. You may not be able to see it or touch it or understand it if you're not around it. I don't know. But to me, there's something there that speaks to culture. And Mike Gundy's been in charge from that standpoint the entire time. And I think that is a credit to him. And he's one of the most consistent coaches in the country from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think K-State has to be an obvious answer. You touched on something with Iowa State that I think is an important part of a culture conversation, your ability to weather a storm, which sometimes might be a season-long kind of storm. But can you bounce back and get back to what you want to do? That'll be an interesting case study for the Cyclones. Oklahoma State has to be one of the more compelling or more intriguing culture case studies because you have had so much success for so long, but then at various points you have I remember when Chubby Hubbard wanted Mike Gundy's shot because of a T-shirt preference. So that was an interesting culture moment, but you got past that. And maybe that's because of your mulleted culture. Maybe the mullet's gone by now. I'm not quite sure. Dave Miranda, I think, is an interesting one. We'll see if they're able to bounce back, not having the season that they wanted to have last year, but Aranda, the Zen master of the Big 12 conference, I think I would have this time a year ago been telling you they've got a pretty good culture, I would imagine. And then you've got probably the most toxic culture in America down in Austin at the University of Texas with your head coach who dresses like a Burger King rapper from the 80s and calls poor little choir boy television interns mothers on national television. So I don't know what to say about that culture, but best of luck with it. And Chris, the Oklahoma Sooners, I don't know if they've decimated every bit of culture they had, and I don't have a feel for Venables really as a leader. I have a feel for him as an assistant to the man. I don't know what the feel is for him as the man when you try to weather some of this stuff. And I think you also mentioned this earlier as far as just extended resume is concerned or not. Sonny Dykes and Texas Christian, you're in a national championship game last year. Kind of hard to say what your long-term vibe or culture is going to be with the program since you just got started there, but pretty damn good one in year number one, winning all your games except for the very last one. But we'll see what they can do the next time around. But yeah, Chris Kleiman in K-State is going to have me jealous 6 ways from Sunday. Some of these that you're mentioning here, though, I think there's a common thread, particularly for Texas Tech and some others similar, non-blue bloods, non-financed better than the Kingdom of God programs. So Texas is excluded from this conversation. Don't beat yourself is what a lot of these have done so well if they've sustained success while not having uber talented rosters. And man, that's something that Texas Tech has not done well for the past decade plus. But maybe you're rounding out into a little bit better form now.
Because that's just a different way of saying be disciplined. And that's what, like when you think of Kansas State, that's probably the first word that I think of is just disciplined. Yes, special teams has always been good, or and some of that is disciplined. Like they block you correctly, they hold their blocks, they do certain things, they don't block in the back, and then they bust a kickoff return, and that's enough to win one more game than maybe they should have in a season. And you start to add these disciplined things up. But, you drop back on a 3rd and 15 and hit a 17-yard pass. And for a lot of teams, there's you look back and there's a, hey, holding, coming back. You never do that with Kansas State. And I think those things, it's just culture, and it's a really good one. They just don't shoot themselves in the foot. They don't turn the ball over typically. And I think but Iowa State, very similar. And it's a Midwestern. I think those teams are developmental programs. I think theoretically your upside should be higher than those kinds of programs, because I do think you can get, better players than they can overall. Can you get those better players, the twitchier players, the more athletic players, whatever, can you get them to buy into being disciplined? Because when you start being really talented and disciplined, now you're cooking with got. Now you're Georgia. Now you're Alabama, now you're LSU. And even those coaches, it's like sometimes, man, it's like, you just have a hard time keeping all the horses in the corral, man. Sometimes they just, things happen. But I think, though, that's what's most impressive about those two programs in particular, because they're Midwestern developmental types. You sprinkle in a few star players, you get lucky on a few, like a Brock Purdy, you get kind of lucky on and develop him and hold on to him. Then Deuce Vaughn is like an MVP, and he's the shortest guy on the field always and all that, and and everybody knows he's getting the ball, and yet you can't do anything about it. And to me, it's like, they've had players too that emulate culture. I think you nailed it too on Texas. I think that the country club culture, or the entitlement, or whatever you want to call it, they have fallen short for a long time. And it's been interesting to see people kind of go all in on them this year, because Sarkisian's teams have never won more than 9 games in a season. Quinn Ewers, for all the credit that he's getting on these QB lists, this is a guy whose completion percentage was below 60 last year. His touchdown to interception ratio, basically, 2.5 to 1, not just, crazy. He also didn't stay healthy. And it's just kind of, I don't know. It's pretty fascinating to see him and them getting a lot of benefit of the doubt, because culture's not really been there for them.
This is the year they promise, they being ESPN and every other national outlet. Somewhere Joe Tessitore is wetting himself at the thought of being able to say again, Texas is back, which I think was uttered somewhere, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. I think they beat Notre Dame in an opening game of the year or something like that. And they were back for all of about 30, 35 minutes or so. And then, time moved on. Want to hear from you on this episode in the YouTube comments. Let us know what you think about the culture landscape across the Big 12, who's got it going on, who doesn't, and the way that you see what Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders have going on presently here in the LBK. Fun to talk about because we do feel like it's in a healthy state right now. Chris, appreciate the insight as always, man. Enjoyed this conversation, and we'll have another one tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Looking forward to it. Keep hope alive and go build yourself some positive culture out there, man. It may pay off for you.
Be a vibe guy or gal.
See, yes.
Good vibe.
Be a vibe.
Good vibe guy.
Yes.
There are plenty of you out there that are bad vibe guy or bad vibe gal. We don't need you. We want good vibe guys and good vibe gals here on Locked On Texas Tech. All right, subscribe on YouTube if you hadn't, so you never miss an episode. And be sure to make us your first listen once again tomorrow on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Appreciate those everydayers out there joining us on the regular. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. We'll see you for the next round right back here on Locked On Texas Tech.